Hey everybody, and welcome to another deep dive with us. Today we're going to be looking at something that I think is really fascinating and something that a lot of people have probably heard about, but don't necessarily know a lot about. And I know I don't know a whole lot about it, so I'm really glad that we have an expert with us today who can help walk us through it. But the thing we're going to be taking a look at is the Benelli M4 shotgun.
Yeah, definitely a very popular firearm, and I'd be happy to share some information about it.
Yeah, so for me, I think of shotguns and I think of like going skeet shooting, going out on the weekend and doing something like
Mm.
that. I don't really think about the tactical deployment of shotguns
Yeah.
or, military and law enforcement using them. So I think for a lot of us who maybe fall into that category, it would be really interesting to kind of break this down and understand how it actually works and then how it's used out in the real world. So maybe we could start with you just giving us a little bit of a rundown. Like, what is it about the Benelli M4 that makes it so special? Is it just a shotgun, or is there something that makes it more unique than that?
Yeah, it's definitely more than just a shotgun. It's a very specific type of shotgun that I think a lot of people would be surprised to hear about when they learn a little bit more about it.
Mm.
The biggest thing that sets it apart from most shotguns that people are familiar with is the fact that it is a semi-automatic shotgun.
Okay.
That means that it automatically cycles the next round after you fire,
Oh,
as opposed to like a pump action shotgun where you'd have to manually work the action to chamber the next round. And it does this using a very unique system called the ARGO system, which stands for auto-regulating gas operated.
okay. So you said semi-automatic. So obviously that means it's going to be a faster firing weapon.
Yeah.
But what about that ARGU system? Is that something that helps with the speed, or what makes that system unique?
The speed is definitely a result of the semi-automatic operation, but the ARGO system is really what makes this gun as reliable as it is.
Okay.
So essentially what it's doing is it's using the gases from the actual shot shell being fired to cycle the action. And it does this through a very simple but effective system of two self-cleaning stainless steel pistons
Right.
that drive the bolt and chamber a new round. And because of the simplicity of that design and the fact that it is self-cleaning, it's incredibly reliable.
That's really interesting.
Also helps to reduce recoil, which is another big advantage of this system.
Okay. And you had mentioned earlier that it's very versatile as well.
That's right.
What is it that makes the Benelli M4 so versatile?
Yeah, so the Benelli M4 can handle a wide range of shot shells from 2 3/4 inch all the way up to 3-inch magnum loads. And it can do this without any adjustments from the user.
Oh, wow.
So that means that you could be out in the field and you could very quickly transition from, say, a less lethal beanbag round to buckshot, depending on the situation that you're faced with.
Okay, so you don't have to like adjust the gun or swap out parts or anything like that.
No, not at all. It can all be done very quickly and easily in the field, which is a huge advantage for this firearm.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So we've got a shotgun that is faster firing, it's very reliable, and it can handle a wide variety of different ammunition.
Yeah.
So it sounds like this would be something that military and law enforcement would be very interested in.
You're absolutely right. And in fact, it has been adopted by militaries and law enforcement agencies all over the world.
Really? Can you tell me a little bit about where this shotgun has been deployed? I'd love to hear, how it's actually used in real-world scenarios.
Yeah, sure. So starting off with the United States military, it's seen action in pretty much every major conflict that the United States has been involved in recent years. Places like Afghanistan, Iraq, and even more recently, it was used in the Syrian civil war.
Wow.
In addition to the United States, other countries like the United Kingdom, Italy, have adopted the M4 for their armed forces.
So this is a weapon that has really been battle-tested in some pretty intense environments,
Yeah, definitely.
and it seems to be holding up very well.
Absolutely.
What is it about the design or about the way it's built that makes it so well suited for those deployments?
One of the key factors is its durability.
Okay.
The M4 is incredibly durable, and it can withstand extreme temperatures, dust, sand, moisture, and just the general abuse that comes with being used in a combat environment.
So it's built tough.
Very tough.
That's really interesting. I mean, you wouldn't think that a shotgun could be so rugged, but I guess when you need to be able to depend on it in those kinds of situations, it has to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Your life could depend on your weapon functioning properly, so reliability and durability are absolutely paramount.
That makes sense. Now, I think I remember reading something about there being different versions of the Benelli M4. Is that right?
You are correct.
What's the difference between the one that soldiers use and the one that, say, a police officer might have?
Well, the biggest difference is between the military designation, which is the M1014,
Okay.
and the civilian versions of the Benelli M4.
Gotcha.
The military model often includes features that are specifically designed for combat situations that you wouldn't necessarily find on the civilian versions.
What kind of features are we talking about?
Well, one of the key features is a collapsible stock,
Right.
which allows the soldier to adjust the length of the stock for better control and maneuverability,
Oh, that's cool.
especially in tight spaces or when they're wearing body armor.
Right. You wouldn't want to have this big long gun if you're trying to, clear a room or something like that.
Exactly.
You need to be able to maneuver.
It's all about being able to adapt to the situation.
Okay, that makes sense.
Another key feature is the Picatinny rail,
Okay.
which is a mounted system that allows soldiers to attach a variety of different optics and accessories.
Oh, so it's modular. Like you can put red dot sights, scopes, all sorts of things on there.
Exactly.
Interesting. So it's really about enhancing the capabilities of the weapon, not just having it be, a brute force tool, but actually giving it some precision and some flexibility.
Precisely.
That's really cool. What about the civilian versions? Do they have these features as well?
Some of them do. Some civilian models do come with Picatinny rails, so you can still mount optics on those.
Yeah.
But there's actually an interesting regulation regarding the collapsible stock on civilian models.
Okay, what is that?
Benelli Tactical, which is the division of Benelli that handles the sales of these firearms, they have a policy of not selling the collapsible stock directly to civilians.
Oh, wow.
They believe that it should be restricted to law enforcement and government agencies.
Oh, that's really interesting. I wonder what the reasoning is behind that.
It seems to be rooted in the idea that certain features, like the collapsible stock, are really best suited for professional use, where there are stricter regulations and oversight in place.
I see. So really making a distinction between the tools that are used by professionals and the tools that are available to the general public.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay, that's interesting. And I think it speaks to, the level of responsibility that comes with owning and using a firearm like this. That, it's not something to be taken lightly. And there are, these considerations about, who should have access to certain features and why.
It's a powerful tool, and it needs to be treated with respect.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we've talked about, some of the key features, what makes it unique from other shotguns. But what is it really that makes the Benelli M4 stand out from all the other combat shotguns that are out there? Why is it that so many militaries and police forces are choosing this particular shotgun over all the others?
Well, it really comes down to a few key advantages: durability, versatility, and ease of maintenance.
Okay.
We've already talked about how durable the M4 is and how it can handle a variety of different ammunition types.
Right.
But it's also incredibly easy to maintain,
Oh,
thanks in part to that self-cleaning REGO system that we were talking about earlier.
so less time cleaning, more time training, or being ready for action.
Exactly, and that ease of maintenance is something that's really crucial for both military and law enforcement applications.
Makes sense, especially for professionals who need to be able to rely on their weapon. You don't want to have to be constantly, tinkering with it or cleaning it.
You need to be able to trust that it's going to work when you need it to.
Exactly. Reliability is key.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've covered a lot about, how it works, how reliable it is, but is there anything about this shotgun that's not so great?
Well, like any firearm, it does have its drawbacks.
Okay. What would you say is the biggest drawback?
Probably the biggest drawback of the M4 is its cost.
Okay.
It is more expensive than many other shotguns on the market.
Yeah, I guess you do what you pay for.
That's generally true with firearms, yes.
Especially if you're talking about something that could potentially save your life, you probably want to go with the higher quality option.
Absolutely. When it comes to something as important as a firearm, you definitely don't want to skimp on quality.
That makes sense.
Uh-huh.
All right, so it sounds like the Benelli M4 is a really impressive piece of weaponry. It's high-tech, it's been battle-tested, and it even comes in different configurations depending on who the user is. But what does all this mean for you, the listener? Why should someone who might not ever handle a firearm care about the Benelli M4?
That's a good question. I think it's important to understand the technology and the real-world applications of firearms like the Benelli M4, even if you're not someone who's ever going to use one.
Yeah, it's about being informed about the tools that are being used, in conflicts and law enforcement and how they impact our world.
Exactly, and that leads to a really interesting question. What does the future hold for a shotgun like the Benelli M4?
That is a great question. As technology continues to advance, will this shotgun remain relevant? or will it eventually become obsolete?
It's tough to say for sure, but it's something worth considering.
Yeah, I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on this, but I think we're going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, we'll dive deeper into the potential future of the Benelli M4. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Before the break, we were talking about the future of the Benelli M4 and whether or not it's going to stay relevant as technology continues to evolve.
Yeah, on one hand, we've got this incredibly reliable shotgun that's been proven to work in some of the toughest environments. But on the other hand, technology is always changing, and there are always new weapons coming out. So I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on this.
Hmm.
Do you think the Benelli M4 has a place in the future of combat?
I do. I think a lot of people might assume that as we get more and more high-tech weapons, like, guided missiles and drones and things like that, that the role of the shotgun would start to diminish. But I actually believe that the Benelli M4 and shotguns in general will continue to be an important tool, at least for the foreseeable future.
That's interesting. Why do you think that is? What makes the shotgun so enduring, even with all of these advancements in technology?
Well, one of the key factors is versatility.
Okay.
Shotguns can be loaded with a wide variety of ammunition, everything from, lethal buckshot to less lethal beanbag rounds, and that makes them really valuable in a wide range of situations.
So it's like having one tool that can be adapted to a lot of different jobs, which would be really important, for military or law enforcement who need to be prepared for anything.
Exactly. And let's not forget about the sheer stopping power of a shotgun. At close range, a shotgun blast is incredibly effective, even against armored targets.
It's true, they have quite a reputation for a reason.
And while other weapon systems might have a longer range, the reality is that a lot of modern combat, especially in urban environments, takes place at very close ranges.
So in those situations, would a shotgun actually be preferable to, say, a rifle or a pistol?
It really depends on the specific situation, but in some cases, yes. The maneuverability of a shotgun combined with the spread of the shot can make it very effective in close quarters combat.
So even with all the advancements in, laser-guided rifles and things like that, there's still a place for a weapon that's as straightforward and powerful as a shotgun.
I think so. Technology can definitely enhance the capabilities of weapon systems, but it doesn't always make older technologies obsolete.
Right, sometimes the simplest tool is the best tool for the job.
Exactly, and I think the shotgun is a prime example of that.
And when you need to deliver a lot of force in a short amount of time, it's hard to beat a shotgun.
Absolutely.
So it sounds like we've established that shotguns in general, and the Benelli M4 specifically, will likely continue to be used in combat situations. But what about law enforcement? How are these weapons being used in that context, and how might that change in the future?
That's another great question, and it's one that I think sparks a lot of debate. Shotguns have been a staple of law enforcement arsenals for decades, and they're used in a wide variety of situations.
Yeah, I can see how the versatility of a shotgun would be really valuable for law enforcement.
Yeah.
Being able to go from lethal to less lethal rounds depending on the situation.
Absolutely. That flexibility is crucial when you're dealing with potentially dangerous situations.
Right, because sometimes you need to de-escalate a situation rather than using deadly force.
Exactly. But the use of shotguns in law enforcement isn't without its controversy. There's always the risk of unintended consequences, especially in crowded environments.
Yeah, that's a really important point to consider.
And I think as technology continues to advance, we're going to see new tools and techniques that could potentially reduce the need for lethal force in certain situations.
Like what kind of things?
Well, things like advanced tasers that are more effective, non-lethal projectiles that are more accurate, and even things like sophisticated surveillance and communication systems that can help to de-escalate situations before they become violent.
So it sounds like while shotguns might remain a part of the law enforcement toolkit, their use might become more specialized, reserved for situations where their unique capabilities are really necessary.
I think that's a likely scenario. But even then, the Benelli M4, with its reliability and ease of use, would probably remain a top contender for those specialized roles.
Okay, so we've talked about the future of the Benelli M4 in both military and law enforcement contexts, but I think there's another aspect of this conversation that's important to acknowledge, and that's civilian ownership of these weapons.
You're right. That's a topic that tends to generate a lot of strong opinions.
It does, and I think it's important to acknowledge that the vast majority of gun owners are responsible and law-abiding citizens who use their firearms safely and legally.
Absolutely. Whether it's for hunting or sport shooting or self-defense, responsible gun ownership is crucial.
But at the same time, we can't ignore the fact that there have been tragic events where firearms have fallen into the wrong hands or been used irresponsibly.
That's unfortunately true.
And that leads to a lot of debate about gun control and the Second Amendment and the right to bear arms.
It's a very complex issue. And while I don't want to get into the politics of it, I do think it's important for everyone to be informed about the weapons that are out there, whether it's the Benelli M4 or any other firearm.
Knowledge is power. And the more we understand about these tools, the better equipped we are to have informed conversations about their role in our society.
I can politely agree.
So it's not just about the mechanics of how the gun works. It's about understanding the history of these weapons, how they've been used, and the responsibilities that come with owning and using them.
It's about seeing the bigger picture.
Exactly. And I think the Benelli M4, with its unique history and its advanced technology, is a perfect example of a weapon that embodies that complexity.
I would agree.
It's been really fascinating talking about this today. I feel like I've learned a lot about the Benelli M4, and I hope our listeners have too.
Me as well.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've been spending some time talking about the Benelli M4 and really getting into the details of this shotgun.
Yeah, it's been a really interesting conversation so far.
It has, and I feel like I've learned so much about this firearm just in our conversation today. But as we kind of wrap things up, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the long-term impact of the Benelli M4. Do you think it's a weapon that will continue to evolve and be updated, or do you think its design will eventually be surpassed by newer technology?
That's a tough question to answer. I think, firearm technology, like any technology, is constantly evolving.
Right.
We're seeing advancements in materials, in manufacturing processes, and even the integration of electronics into firearms.
It's amazing to think how far we've come. It makes me wonder what the next generation of shotguns will look like.
Yeah, I think we could see advancements in ammunition technology, further refinements to gas-operated systems. We might even see smart technology integrated into shotguns.
Smart technology in a shotgun, what would that even look like?
Well, imagine a shotgun with built-in sensors that could track your ammunition count, provide feedback on recoil, or even interface with targeting systems.
That sounds like something straight out of a science fiction movie.
It does, but some of those technologies are already being explored in other firearms, so it's not inconceivable that we'll start to see them in shotguns as well.
It'll be interesting to see what happens, but it also kind of makes you think about what are the implications of that?
Absolutely. Anytime you have a technological advancement, you have to consider the ethical and societal implications.
For sure, for sure.
But I think the future of the Benelli M4 and shotguns in general is pretty bright. Their fundamental strengths, the reliability, the versatility, the stopping power, those are all things that are going to be relevant for many years to come.
That makes sense. The shotgun is such a classic design, and even with all the advancements in technology, it seems like it's still going to have a place.
I think so.
But, beyond just the technology itself, I think this deep dive has really highlighted something even more important. I think it's about understanding the impact that these tools have on our world. The Benelli M4 is more than just a collection of metal parts. It's a symbol of the complex relationship that we have with firearms and the role that they play in conflict and security.
Yeah, I agree. It's a good reminder that these are powerful tools.
They are.
And we need to have thoughtful conversations about their responsible use and regulation.
I couldn't agree more. It's about more than just the mechanics. It's about seeing the bigger picture and understanding the implications of these tools.
It is. And the Benelli M4 is a great example of that.
Well, this has been a fantastic conversation. I've learned so much today, and I really appreciate you taking the time to break all of this down for us.
It's been my pleasure.
And to all of our listeners out there, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Benelli M4. We hope you found it as informative and thought-provoking as we did. We'll catch you next time for another fascinating exploration of the world around us.